Examine the success of any industrial titan, whether it is Carnegie and his steel of mountains or Rockefeller and his sea of oil, and you will find a sought green commodity fueling their industry: money. And in 1800s, one man had most control over it: John Pierpont Morgan. To comprehend the breadth of Pierpont's effect, we must first go back in time to a time before America was an economic superpower with a $21 trillion GDP. It's all easy to forget that America was once an emerging economy, one that was nearly exclusive reliant on British finance not long ago. So without further ado, let's look at how JP Morgan became the most powerful man in American finance by mix of timing, intellect, and connections. Normally, we begin someone's life story with their birth, but the story of JP Morgan cannot be recounted without discussing the powerful family that raised him. Pierpont's grandpa, John Pierpont, was a radical and fiery preacher who taught his grandson the power of persuasive speech, a skill that would eventually pay benefits for the future captain of industry. Junius Spencer Morgan, Pierpont's father, was a significantly more powerful and influential character in his life. Junius was a well-known businessman in both the American and European financial sectors, and he took it upon himself to mold his son into his own cool and collected image, training the youngster to eventually join the family banking firm. No other guy has had the same type of influence on Pierpont's life as his adored father. Their father-son connection, on the other hand, is arguably best defined as tough love. But let's not go too far ahead of ourselves. On April 17, 1837, John Pierpont Morgan was born into this affluent environment, with every opportunity available to prepare him for what was to follow. But it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine for Morgan. He was an ailing child. He had seizures as an infant and was frequently afflicted with rheumatic fever, scarlet fever, and terrible migraines as he grew older. His most noticeable medical issue, though, was his acne rosacea, which badly irritated and broke the blood vessels in his nose. Without treatment in the mid-1800s, his condition progressed, converting his unsightly nose into a scarred red and purple deformity. Although you wouldn't know that by looking at most images of JP Morgan, which is exactly what he wanted. According to his great-grandson, whenever Morgan commissioned a portrait or photo of himself, he insisted on having his enormous nose touched up after the fact. In essence, it was the 1800s counterpart of Photoshop. Pierpont's varied physical issue necessitated his isolation, making him somewhat a loner. Pierpont, unable to play outside like the other kids, stayed inside and studied and learned to read financial statements. Pierpont found solace in playing solitaire, a card game that became one of his lifelong hobbies. When he wasn't gathering information, Pierpont was a natural leader in the classroom. He would frequently dispute his professors and, though logic, persuade them not to punish them. As he progressed through school, his leadership abilities drew the attention of his seemingly impossible-to-please father, Junius, who would devote his energies to assisting Pierpont in developing his bright economic potential. Pierpont became obsessed with powerful men as a result of his father's success, and he began collecting autographs from presidents and other renowned persons. His interest in prominent leaders prompted him to compose a school essay about Napoleon Bonaparte. Despite of his parents' efforts to introduce him to American heroes, Pierpont was primarily impressed by Napoleon and was profoundly influenced by the general's revenues, ambition for worldwide supremacy, a notion that resonated with a future leader. Junius Pierpont became a partner in the London-based financial firm George Peabody and Company on October 1, 1854. The Morgans moved to London not long after. Pierpont was only 17 at that time, would not be staying long. Junius wanted to impart ideas of discipline and accountability in his son, concerned about his son's mood swings and fierce temper. Junius sent Pierpont to the Institut Selig, a Swiss boarding school on Lake Geneva, 600 miles away, because he only wanted the best for him. This would not be his first time being separated from his family. Junius sent Pierpont to the distant Azores Island when he was only 15 years old to assist him to recuperate from rheumatic disease. He'd spent a full year healing from his illness by himself. Perhaps this was part of his father's unique parenting strategy to toughen Pierpont and help him become independent. Pierpont began his work on Wall Street after graduation, hoping to profit from the rich, developing American market. Pierpont obtained an entry-level employment as an unpaid clerk with a modest banking firm in New York, with the assistance of his father. One of his primary jobs was to provide international intelligence to his father in London, which included giving the most recent American economic and potential updates. For 33 years, Pierpont set aside Tuesday and Friday evenings to write to his father, who not only read but treasures his son's lengthy letters. Pierpont acquired tremendous first-hand business expertise with his new employment on Wall Street. But his boundless desire quickly exceeded that modest organization, and in 1861, he founded his own firm, J. Pierpont Morgan and Company. Pierpont's introduction to New York's elites, allowing him to interact with members of high society, was one of the benefits of working in the banking profession. Amelia Sturgs piqued his interest and put a fierce love in his heart during one of these gatherings. Amelia, or Mimi, as she was more popularly known of, also came from a banking family, and when Pierpont first saw her, he was captivated. Pierpont and Mimi were inseparable for the next 3 years, and when his business expanded, he utilized his newfound fortune to buy her a Tiffany's ring with the intention of proposing. But their lives were about to take a turn for the worst. Mimi approached Pierpont that summer with a lingering cough, preparing for a wedding in a few months. Despite Mimi's protest that she was too unwell for a wedding, Pierpont raced to marry the woman of his dreams in October 1861. Morgan discovered a method to benefit from the bloodshed as the fights dragged on. Bonds of the European Union are traded. He observed that bond values fluctuated in value in response to the outcome of each fight, ability to predict the outcome of the Union and Confederate armies. The outcome of a conflict brought large gains. Morgan sought additional ways to commercialize the conflict, in addition to Union bond speculation. The 24-year-old was involved in what became known as the Hell Carbine Affair. A New York-based corporation approached Pierpont with a novel business concept. Simon Stevens is a lawyer. Stevens proposed that Morgan lend him $20,000 at a 7% interest rate to purchase roughly 5,000 antique weapons known as Hall carbines. Stevens could obtain the guns from which were widely regarded as antiqued but still serviceable. Union Army for the low price of $3.50 each. Stevens' goal was to update the guns by modernizing them, with Morgan's financing, cartridges increasing the range and accuracy. Stevens was able to upgrade the firearms for only 75 cents more each rifle. The guns would then be flipped, with the earnings going to the Army. Morgan's loan must be repaid with interest. The strategy worked perfectly. Following the Union Army's defeat at the First Battle of Bull Run, the North abruptly. It was in severe need of rifles. The Army reluctantly agreed to repurchase the newly improved weaponry at a high cost, a price tag of $22 per, despite selling the same firearms for $3.50 only about a month before. 2 years later, a congressional committee in charge of the government contracts was formed, referred to those participating in the Morgan-Picked scheme as worse than a traitor. These types of arrangements, however, did not make Pierpont popular, especially among his peers. Junius's father ran a conservative and non-speculative firm, Philosophy, a result of his first-hand experience during the 1857 panic. That's it for today's video. What do you guys think? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, and see you on our next video.